What does the ministry of Jesus of Nazareth say about these times? In the book Jesus and the Disinherited, the late Dr. Howard Thurman offered in the very first chapter, Jesus, an interpretation of a Palestinian Jew. And in his exploration, he wanted to know, what does the ministry of Jesus of Nazareth say and speak to a people whose backs are against the wall? The stock market is tumbling. The government, backed by the Supreme Court of the United States, is being changed every single day with the spurious rulings that certainly suggest that the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution itself is being threatened by not only this court and this president, but by traditional understandings of what it means to provide every American equal protection of the laws. I've asked Dr. Willie Gable Jr., a native of New Orleans, who received his doctorate of ministry from the United Theological Seminary in Dayton, Ohio, Master of Divinity from Union Baptist Theological Seminary in New Orleans, Louisiana, Master of Public Health from the University of Southern California in Los Angeles, and a Bachelor's of Science degree from Tennessee State University in Nashville, Tennessee. Dr. Gable's life is committed to a ministry of community service. He's the pastor emeritus of Progressive Baptist Church, at that time only the third pastor in its 124-year history. He's the founder and executive director of the Dr. M. W. McCaleb Educational Fund, Inc., a nonprofit organization that offers housing, rental assistance, and tutoring to low-income individuals and families. Dr. Gable has formerly served on many boards. He's currently the member of Leading Age, Chairman, President, National Baptist Convention Housing and Economic Development Board, National Conference for Community and Justice, Legacy Foundation, Gulf Coast Housing Partnership. Dr. Gable is the director of the Faith-Based Initiatives HUD National Baptist Convention USA and the third vice president of the First District of the Deputy Dean of the Louisiana Baptist Home and Foreign Mission State Convention. Dr. Willie Gable, welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you, my friend. And I'm excited to be here.
Dr. Gable, I am particularly excited that you are our special guest. When we began this radio ministry, if you will, my first guest on the program was Dr. Walter Fluker.
Yes.
Second guest was Dr. Obery Hendricks. Then we had Dr. James Forbes. Reverend Michael Eric Dyson has been on the program. Some of the most profound and thoughtful theologians, thought leaders, spiritual leaders in our country who've given some context to the times and what it means for people whose backs are against the wall and the appropriate response. Dr. Gable, you have been for more than 5 decades a preacher's preacher. You've been an educator of preachers. If you were in the classroom today, and you may very well still be, what would you be sharing with the next generation of preachers, those prophetic voices who need to speak so loudly in this particular time?
Well, when I think about that, and I'm quasi in the classroom, I still do some teaching with some preachers. And at this time, one of the primary predicates I bring to them is going back to the context of the word, not just the word, but the context, because context rules interpretation.
Mm,
And what we find is that there are those who preach the word without understanding the context of the word. And there
mm,
must be, in my opinion, humble opinion, the context has to incorporate where the individuals are. The late Dr. Gardner Taylor said to me, son, if you really want to understand scripture, you have to buy a house, move into the neighborhood, and then come outside and smell the environment. Well, if
mm.
you knew Gardner, you had to sit back and try to figure out what he's talking about. But I found out that's truly how you understand. That's true context. context ruling interpretation, particularly in this current period. Our preachers have to understand that Jesus of Nazareth was a revolutionary.
Mm,
Jesus of Nazareth was a liberator. Jesus of Nazareth
mm,
dealt with the poor, the disenfranchised, and he challenged the system to include them.
mm.
That's what his ministry was all. I've come for the poor. I've come to release the captive. My commission is to do the things that are different than what's being done by the scribes, the Pharisees, and in fact, those who say they understand the covenant relationship.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest is Dr. Willie Gable Jr., teacher, pastor, theologian. He's going to offer for us the context within which we position and situate the ministry of Jesus of Nazareth. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580. Before the fire, Altadena was a real-life Wakanda. A thriving black oasis just 15 miles from downtown Los Angeles. 80% black residents were homeowners, building intergenerational wealth against the odds. It was a hub of black-owned businesses, churches, and cultural institutions. It stood as a symbol of black resilience and economic independence. Then, in a matter of hours, it was gone. The fire tore through homes, swallowed businesses, and left behind a painful void. But was it just an unstoppable act of nature, or was negligence involved? Did officials ignore early warning signs? Were the response efforts delayed or insufficient? What role, if any, did corporate or government failures play? Survivors are demanding answers. Don't miss our KBLA Talk 1580 Town Hall. The Eden Altadena Fire, 100 days and counting, on Wednesday, April 16th, 4 to 6 p.m. at the Robinson Park Recreation Center, 1081 North Fair Oaks in Pasadena. Join Dominic DePrima, Nee Cordelai Corte, James Farr, Tavis Smiley, and a panel of survivors, community leaders, and experts as we commemorate day 100 since the wildfires flared up, and we discuss where we go from here. It's KBLA's Eden Altadena Fire, 100 days and counting Town Hall, Wednesday, April 16th, 4 to 6 p.m. at the Robinson Park Recreation Center in Pasadena. Light refreshments to follow. Admission is free, but sign-up is required at our KBLA1580.com website. The first 100 attendees will receive a complimentary air purifier. This is a community call to action, brought to you by KBLA Talk 1580 and Quinn Emanuel Trial Lawyers. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Febreze. As a rideshare driver, I love keeping my car smelling fresh and clean. So when I'm driving, I only trust Febreze car vent clips, featuring 3 distinct intensity settings, because it's that little touch that sets me apart. I can turn the intensity down for subtle freshness, or I can turn it up for when I want lots of scent. So whether it's set to low, medium, or high, with Febreze car, I know my car's going to smell amazing. Which keeps my driver rating right where it belongs. Picking up, Oscar!
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest is a preacher's preacher, a theologian, a teacher, a scholar, the head and director of the Faith-Based Initiatives program for the National Baptist Convention USA. He's an activist and a very, very serious minister. Dr. Willie Gable Jr. Dr. Gable, welcome back to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you, my friend and brother.
Dr. Gable,
Uh,
just before the break, you were talking about context, situating
yes,
the ministry of Jesus of Nazareth and situating these pastors in the proper
absolutely.
context.
Yes. The preacher today, and I'm not throwing stones, However, what I'm simply saying, Jesus, when he came, just look at the story, the narrative.
Mm,
Jesus didn't come initially and challenge the Romans. The first thing Jesus challenged was the hierarchy in the religious community from which he was birthed,
mm,
Judaism.
mm,
That's
mm,
what he challenged, that
mm,
hierarchy. And that's the structure we challenge today, whether it's Baptist, evangelical, Catholic. When what has happened today, and I'll throw this in for some context, is that the church has lied on God.
Go ahead and tell them now, Reverend.
They've lied on God.
Mm,
When we start talking about God is against a woman's right to choose, don't say that God said that. You say that. That's
mm,
your interpretation.
mm,
Because the first cause that God established, if we're going to be biblicists and accept the garden story,
mm,
first cause was the right to choose.
mm,
He said, you all have a right to choose this tree or not choose this tree.
mm.
And so, in other words, choice was the first thing that he established.
Wow.
And it is still there right now.
That's right.
Jesus simply said, you can accept me or not accept me. I'm still going to be the Son of God.
Mm,
You accept me or not accept me. I still will do what I have intended to do.
mm,
I've got my intended will, my permissive will, and my ultimate will. And my
mm,
ultimate will one day line up with my intended will. So
mm,
fight me if you will. And so where we stand today is that there has been an unholy alliance
mm,
between some religious leaders and this government that we're under now. And
mm,
with these supposed to be United States. And because of this unholy alliance, this marriage, so to speak, between these nationalists, these Christian nationalists, we find ourselves not only dealing with religious problems, but also with the governmental problems. So this
mm,
requires a preacher of the gospel to stand flat footed and proclaim that, as you stated in the beginning, when we talk about Jesus and the disinherited, those individuals are the sure ones that Jesus came to.
mm,
He came for the poor, and we have to declare that. This money cometh stuff that's still going around, and name it and claim it, and people trying to deal with gifts and all of that, man, all that stuff is gone. The
mm.
reality of life is here, and we as believers have to stand up to the institution. We'll always have to stand up. The poor we're going to have with us always, and that's our responsibility, to work for and with the poor.
Now,
But yes, go ahead.
yeah, what you're saying to me makes absolute sense. Help our audience, Dr. Gable, understand how we, again, without casting stones, how do we as laypersons discern between the prophetic voice and the prophetic vision that you've offered with context from those who are just up talking
Hmm.
and talking without context?
Well, the first thing we have to do, we got eyes. We have to look at the person, and and there's a piece of scripture in Acts where Herod decided to believe that when the people called him a god, the fella believed that. And because we have in our context the black church, we as preachers are sometimes looked upon as gods.
Mm,
The robes we come up in, we stand up and the people yielding to what we say. So as a layperson, what we have to stand is have all individuals who are followers of Jesus understand there's as much of God in you
mm,
as it is in the preacher. In fact,
mm,
we're servants. The Lord's of servants. It's a good job. I wouldn't give it up for the world. But
mm,
I'm a servant of Christ. But
mm.
every one of us got God in us. We don't need a little more Jesus. We got enough Jesus. Stop singing that song. We've got all of God in us, dwelling permanently, if you are a believer now, at
Mhm.
home. And what you have to do is kind of submit and let him rule and reign.
Let me make a small pivot for our listeners. I want our listeners to understand that Reverend Willie Gable Jr. is one of the climate change prophetic experts in African American Christianity, in American Christianity, and maybe even global Christianity. And while we're focusing somewhat of this interview on the question of the context and what would the ministry of Jesus of Nazareth say to a people whose backs against the wall, the litany of issues that are contemporary, that confront the church, that confront our nation, that confront our world, Dr. Gable is engaged in them even at the level of the environment. And not often do we hear preachers who, from the pulpit, speak judgmentally about sinners and about saints and all of that. Doc, we are tearing up our world. Help bridge that gap and show the theological relationship between why we must fight to save our planet as also part of our ministry against sin and judgment.
It's so critical right now. There are those who don't believe in the climate problem. There are those who say it does not exist. But all you have to do is look at the scientific data. All you have to do is watch Antarctica. All you have to do is just sit down and look at your evening news. When
Mm,
you see tornadoes and hurricanes and winds, and compare that to what's happening on other planets, when we see the swirling winds on Jupiter and other places, other planets, we are facing that right now.
mm,
And we have to start making the changes. Obviously, it's the uh, cars and what we are spewing into the atmosphere. But our thin layer that protects us from those on, we have a problem now. So I'm involved with a group called One Home, One Future. And that's
mm,
all we have is one home. You don't have it's like our bodies. You don't have another body and you don't have another home. The earth is all you got. And God is not going to give any more dirt. And all of this stuff about we're going to move to Mars and set up a planet, in the old lexicon of my ancestors, that's hogwash.
mm,
You,
mm,
we can look at Star Wars and all of that, man. We're not going beyond that stuff. I'm not naive to the fact that technology has brought us to places unknown. Man, from Carl Sagan to the astrophysicists who are with us today, I constantly go back and listen and learn from what they have brought to me in terms of understanding the place in which we live, this universe. and the various billions of universes that are out there. I can't answer the question if there's life somewhere else. That I don't know. But what
Mm.
I do know is where we are living right now, we're destroying the very place in which we habitate.
So
And
you
if
look at
we don't,
creation. You see creation, right? You filter it
yes,
through the biblical context. You
yes,
you filter it through the creative through the creation stories and make sense
yes,
of it all with good science. You don't run from good science in the
never.
articulation. Mm,
You cannot run away from science. I understand the word and I understand society when the word was written from the
mm,
beginning of the Mosaic. And, obviously, as systematic theology instructor, I had to deal with those questions that
mm,
students asked about what came first. How did God allow sin? And was it God who brought sin? And did God make the devil? And is God everywhere and all of that? Why does God allow hurricanes? And why do people die from tornadoes and earthquakes? That those are very real questions. And
mm,
you can't run from those questions, but you have to be able to present the answers in the context of where we are in terms of a universe and how this planet works and revolves and how it's impacted by what the position in which we are in. But
mm.
from your posture, the city you're living in, the town you're living in, we have to be careful, man. Here down in Louisiana, we still have these fellas who want to build plants in black neighborhoods that spew out junk that poisons the bodies. Not only does it poison the atmosphere, but it's poisoning the bodies of our young children.
Dr. Gibble,
We call it Cancer Alley.
Dr. Gibb, we have about 3 minutes before the break, and I'm trying to get as many questions in because I think our,
Certainly,
our leaders are certainly learning something from you today. Our country is evenly divided, and
absolutely.
um, it seems to me that given the way in which your mind works, you might have some insights on the nature of man
Hmm.
that also provide some context, how we treat the environment, how we treat the least of these. Can you put some context into any revelations or insights that you might have on man's nature that might even be equally as troubling?
Well, it's it, all of us are created equal by God. We are there. It's that we live in what's called a democracy where we all are supposed to have inalienable rights. But that's not so.
Mm,
So remember, let's see if I can put it this way, and maybe I'll make it plainer. The the Jews lived under a the Jews lived under a theocracy. It
mm,
was all God. Everything from a birth, all they knew about was God. But when God came into the picture in terms of currently now, we live under a Christocracy, to be perfectly honest. If
mm,
you're a follower of Christ, you're under a Christocracy. You might be placed in a democracy, but it's a Christocracy. And if
mm,
you don't emulate and you don't follow the teachings of Christ, you're not really a believer when
mm.
it comes to dealing with our creativity as human beings. It,
I
it,
find I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I find that particularly fascinating because I've never heard anyone use the terminology of the Christocracy. We have about
Yes,
30 seconds, but I'd love for you to expound on that, and then we'll go right to the
but
right coming forward. Go ahead.
listen, we're under a Christocracy because we're followers of Christ,
Mm,
people of that way. So everything we do should tie to Christ. We're hooked to Him.
mm,
We live under a Christocracy in that's a Greek that Greek word in it, but we live under kata. That's another word. We
mm,
live under the master
Mm, mm.
in a democracy.
I'm Jesse
And what
Jackson Jr. I'm sorry, Dr. Gable. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, Dr. Willie Gable is going to continue breaking down the system and the context within which we live. When we come forward.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. The trial of former Sheriff's Deputy Sean Grayson charged with killing Sonia Massey, a Black woman, has been moved to Peoria County. His lawyers argued he could not get a fair trial in Sangamon County, Illinois. No date has been set. Rep. Laurel Lee, the only Florida lawmaker who backed Ron DeSantis for president, is now endorsing Black Rep. Byron Donalds for governor. She joins 6 other members of Florida's congressional delegation. Black New York City Mayor Eric Adams' administration is allowing ICE to open an office at Rikers Island to work with city officials on gang and drug cases. Critics, including Black City Council Speaker Adrian Adams, say it aligns New York City with Trump's harsh deportation policies. And LeBron James is becoming Mattel's first ever Ken ambassador with his own Ken doll. Taller than the usual Ken, it features James in a varsity jacket, Beats headphones, and Nike sneakers. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Think It Up is an initiative to activate student-powered, teacher-led learning projects. Students and teachers, how can you spark great learning experiences in your classrooms today? Join at thinkitup.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers have to regroup in a hurry after a demoralizing loss Tuesday night at Oklahoma City. The Lakers have a highly emotional game tonight in Dallas. It's the first return to Dallas for Luka Doncic after he was traded to the Lakers for Anthony Davis on February 1st. Doncic played his first 5.5 NBA seasons with Dallas. His tune-up last night for tonight's game ended early. Doncic was ejected with 7 minutes left in the third quarter after getting 2 technical fouls. Doncic had 23 points and 5 assists before he was tossed. The Lakers and Dallas tip off at 4:30 on ESPN. The Clippers extended their winning streak to 5 with a 122-117 win over San Antonio at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood. 24 points and 20 rebounds for Vika Zubac. The Clippers moved into a 4-way tie for 4th place in the Western Conference with Denver, Golden State, and Memphis. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Hi, I'm Dominique DePrima, and it's almost time to celebrate KBLA's 4th anniversary, coming up Juneteenth 2025. We'll be marking the achievement with 4 key community events, including a special symposium, luncheon, and brain trust hosted by me entitled The State of Black Women in Los Angeles. Keep it locked here for details on how to join us for this groundbreaking symposium examining the unique challenges, triumphs, and contributions of Black women in Los Angeles in the areas of education, healthcare, community leadership, cultural and political contributions. This public convocation will provide a critical forum to address the specific social, economic, and political realities facing Black women in LA today. We'll go live with a radio broadcast and YouTube live stream, a public discussion, and a private dialogue with some of LA's most impactful women. It's an affirmation of Black women standing at the intersection of race and gender in times of adversity while demonstrating remarkable resilience and leadership. We will listen and we will speak out and be heard, all in service of finding opportunities and solutions. Please plan to join us in celebrating our 4th anniversary by amplifying the voices of Black women. For more on our symposium and 4 events celebrating 4 years on the air, simply stay tuned or keep an eye on KBLA1580.com and help make this Juneteenth more jubilant with all of us at KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest is Dr. Willie Gable Jr. Dr. Gable this will not be his last time on our show. 1 hour just is not enough time to cover the scope of the issues that we need to cover with Dr. Gable's mind. Dr. Gable, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you again for inviting me, my friend.
Dr. Gable, let me ask you this question just before we returned to the past and we now come forward. That is the past segment. Not only are we speaking about context, but we're talking about the Christocracy. And obviously there is this moral code for which the ministry and prophetic ministers preach, but then there's also the civic code. And where the moral code meets the civil code, something unique can happen. For example, a common unity, a community, a brotherhood of all persons, a brother and a sisterhood of all persons. We find a lot of ministers over here on the moral code, but a lot of them not engaged in the voter registration activities that you engage in. And I've seen you over more than a dozen states on behalf of Kamala Harris. Help the moral code and civil code come together for the brethren on our program today.
It's so important that we understand that we are not isolated or one-sided when it comes to Christianity and followers of Christ. Jesus was highly involved in the moral, but also in the theological. He didn't have a problem with that. And it wasn't dualism. There was no dichotomy. It was just a single point in him that he brought forth to all that came to him and those in which he found, whom his father led him to. The centurion, that was government. And so what we have to understand also, when we talk about the Christ story, he came, he started, but it continues with those who believe. The best blessing that he gave is when Thomas said, I got to see it for myself. And that's no problem. I ain't got no problem with Thomas. I can understand that. But then he said, Thomas, now I'm not knocking you, my friend, but greater is the ones who believe and have not seen. And we haven't seen him, we didn't walk with him and all that, but the story of God coming to humanity is continuing right now. And in the midst of this society in which we live in, where we have a government that is so far to the right and so absent from the love which Christ gives to us, and he says we shall share with everyone. In the midst of that, we find ourselves being hopeless sometimes, but we ought not be. I'll just say this to you. God is still in charge. Sovereignty has not dissipated or disappeared. He's still in charge. So for me, I'm sort of sitting back as if I'm at a movie, but I'm actively involved in the movie, waiting to see what God will do next. Man, I am upset about how America's voice has not stood up for the people in Gaza. I'm not, Sudan. My time in the Republic of the Congo, it's real.
Mm,
M23 is real. We tried to deal with that by going there, but this genocide
mm,
in Gaza,
mm,
which with America being complicit right now, is unholy, and it
mm,
is not of God.
mm.
There's no way the priest told Netanyahu, God said.
Yeah, yeah.
He's Ahab.
That's a good word. That's a good word right there. We were together recently at the National Action Network conference under the leadership of Reverend Sharpton. And obviously, I don't think there's ever been a Rainbow Push Coalition convention that you've ever missed. I can only
No.
imagine the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and the NAACP. Everyone across the panorama of African American leadership knows Dr. Willie Gable. There are challenges for our leadership in this period. We've never had a president who would weaponize the Department of Justice, just
Yes.
as, if you will, Caesar and Herod and others weaponized the ministry of Jesus of Nazareth. Share with us some of the pitfalls and concerns that you might have and why these challenges to prophetic ministry exist.
I think we must understand as servants of Christ, we're going to have to suffer with him.
Mm,
And this might be the decade where we will have to suffer.
mm,
We did it in the 60s in civil rights. And man, I grew up in the projects in New Orleans. I didn't believe in letting people throw eggs at me, and Martin saying, no, don't say anything, love them.
mm.
I wanted to cuss them out. That was in me. And the truth be told, I still have it in me. But I got more Christ than the Callio in
Mm,
me.
mm,
Chateau Callio project. It was the Chateau. And we have to understand we're in a serious time with mankind under God's divine will, where preachers who really are servants of Jesus Christ will have to suffer for proclaiming the prophetic truth.
mm.
That's you. You cannot be with Caesar and with Christ. Can't do it. And so the leadership, all of my good friends, Derek at NAA and Mark and Al, and obviously your father, the Reverend. And I hear this all the time. I'm sure you hear. Well, but we don't have nobody.
Mm,
Who do we have right now can lead us and bring us out of this? You know what my answer to them is? Man, you got Christ,
mhm,
you got
mhm,
Jesus.
mhm,
Stand where you are and
mhm.
proclaim.
Can I
You
ask this
get
question?
out. Yes,
Let me
sir.
ask this question, Reverend, because I mean, you touched upon the central core of what made Jesus so different. He was willing to suffer with the people. Are there pastors and leaders willing to suffer?
I don't know the answer to that question, but it appears that there are not that many. They like the luxury of the cars and the mansions and the titles and the meetings. We
Mm.
actually meet too much. We really meet too much. And I'll say this, I'll get in trouble from my brother, but we've got too many associations and groups. I have this, people will probably, I'm a great fan of the Godfather.
Mm.
Godfather 1, Godfather 2, Godfather 3. As a fact, I'm affectionately called by some of my friends here, preacher friends, Don
Mm.
Corleone. All right. But I'm also a fan of Caesar,
Mm.
in the Planet of the Apes. And there's a theology that Caesar established that
Mm.
we preachers ought to establish if we're going to change things in America. Caesar said to his comrades, apes stronger together.
Mm. Mm.
Apes stronger together. That's the theology of Caesar. Preachers are stronger together. Black preachers, I'll put it that way, are stronger together.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to one of the most prolific African-American ministers of any generation, Dr. Willie Gable Jr. We are going to welcome him back on our program many, many more times, because an hour just doesn't do justice to what he has to share with us, particularly being able to discern between the prophetic word and the capacity of prophetic preachers to suffer with us. When we come forward, we will have our final 10-minute segment with Dr. Willie Gable Jr. I have a couple more questions for him, and then I want him to end for us today on a word of hope. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, I'm Joe Montaigne. Let's talk about veteran homelessness, because it's not just a housing issue, it's a human issue. Right now, we need LA property owners to open their doors and give veterans a safe place to call home. With guaranteed rent and dedicated support, you can be part of the solution. Learn how you can help. Email houseourvets@lacity.org.
Looking for a purposeful and passionate way to make a difference in your community? Volunteer with our Senior Medicare Patrol and help prevent Medicare fraud. S&P volunteers work in their community educating peers about healthcare fraud and how to prevent and detect it. Free training starts soon. Check us out online or at an S&P open house near you. We're on a mission to stop fraud. Join our team. You make a difference. Visit casmpvolunteer.org. Protect yourself from Medicare card scams. Scammers may call, email, or even knock on your door claiming they need your Medicare info, asking for money or threatening to cancel your benefits. Don't fall for it. It's a scam. Remember, Medicare doesn't need to verify your information. They already have it. Medicare won't charge you for a new card and will never threaten to cancel benefits. Check your Medicare statements for suspicious charges and report scams to the California Senior Medicare Patrol at 1-855-613-7080. We're here to help.
We all hear the radio ads about the IRS. They tell you to be afraid, to be scared, and they try to frighten you into calling. I'm not here to do that. Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here to tell you that if you owe money to the IRS, whether it's $5,000, $50,000, or $500,000, we have a solution. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in your car, at work, or with your kids. No matter where you are, call now. 800-550-9651. Don't lose hope. TRA can eliminate or reduce what you owe to the IRS. Generous programs are now available that can give you a fresh start. Our passion is taxes and helping individuals fix their IRS problems. We have over 1,000 5-star reviews on Google and an A+ with the Better Business Bureau. You don't need to be afraid of the IRS any longer. End your tax nightmare today by visiting us online at TRA.com or call 800-550-9651. That's 800-550-9651. Tax Relief Advocates. Real solutions for real people.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to self-care and community well-being. Walk Good LA was formed in June 2020, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and the beginning stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. What began as a few minutes of breath work and yoga meditation before protests against police brutality turned into a safe space for the community to heal in hard times. The immensely positive response from the community transformed the momentum into a movement. Today, Walk Good LA is a Black and Brown-led community wellness organization based in Los Angeles. They provide spaces for healing through community yoga classes, guided meditations, hikes, run clubs, and other activations throughout Los Angeles that attract hundreds of members weekly. With the help of Propel and Michael B. Jordan, they now have a yoga and wellness studio in Los Angeles called the Walk Good Yard. To join their mailing list and connect with healing spaces, please visit
walkgoodla.org. That's walkgoodla.org. Or find them on Instagram at walkgoodla. This is a community call to action, a community call to healing from KBLA Talk 1580.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. What an exciting hour we've had to replenish our spirits. It can easily get broken in these very difficult times. I have really one final question that I want to ask Dr. Gable. It's going to go into maybe a couple of other very small areas, but I've asked my producer to let me know, Dr. Gable, when we reach about the 5-minute point before the show closes, so that I can leave that final 5 minutes for you to share with our audience a word of hope. What brings me from the last segment forward is this. I remember reading something that James Baldwin wrote about the time that he spent with Martin Luther King Jr. in Birmingham. And he was trying to find out what it was that made Martin Luther King Jr. so special. And in this particular article that he wrote, and I'm going to pull it up for future programs, and I certainly hope that you will come back as a guest on our program because our audience is not getting enough. He said Martin Luther King Jr. was obviously scholar. And he said he was good at that. He said Dr. King sure could preach. He had analyzed it. He said he was really good at that. He said Dr. King was right on the politics. He had understood Southern segregationists. He had understood the Democratic Party of Thomas Jefferson and the party of Abraham Lincoln. After all, his daddy was a Lincoln Republican. He said he understood the politics. He said, but what made Dr. King so special wasn't all of the obvious, that he could do all of these things, is that Dr. King personally was suffering. And he took his suffering and he identified with the suffering of members of his congregation and the suffering of those women who had to go to work under the conditions of Jim Crow segregation. In other words, James Baldwin said it all boiled down to him for Dr. King's capacity to suffer with his congregation, to understand what the people were feeling, and they in turn, therefore, he said, suffered together. And in that suffering, they worked their way together to the strength and the courage to boycott buses, to walk across Edmund Pettus Bridge, and to do it in a spirit of love and nonviolence. I'm
Absolutely.
profoundly struck by what you had to say about suffering and whether or not today's ministers are willing to suffer like Martin Luther King Jr. was willing to do with the rest of us.
We have to suffer. Jesus suffered. That Greek word, when the text in Luke and the Matthew account, where Jesus saw the masses who had followed him from Capernaum, and he looked upon them and said to the disciples, and the Bible says that he had compassion upon them. That word compassion literally means to suffer with, to be in there. When Jesus had compassion, all of the people, no food, no place, they are poor. You know, we think that the followers of Jesus lived in the suburbs. No, man, these folk were just like most of our people. Don't have no money, didn't have anything. They were seeking a better life, a better opportunity, a better understanding. And Jesus came and spoke to them the words of hope, the words of life, and it will be different. And they don't have to wait till the by and by. You know, Mike Martin, I call him Mike, but Dr. King had had to deal with that, with the people challenging him about, you black preachers always bring people to heaven. We got to deal, with the folk that was, with Malcolm. We got to deal with, and I was in SNCC. The school, my college sent me to the SNCC meeting. We got to deal with what we don't have right now. So what I'm simply saying, one cannot really be a servant of Jesus Christ
Mm,
unless you are willing to suffer with the people you are serving, to
mm,
feel their pain, to feel their sorrow, to
mm,
cry with them. I have buried a congregation before. I can look back at my ministry and bury it. I wasn't supposed to be doing this.
mm,
I'm saying I'm like Peter. I wasn't worthy, but Jesus specialized in recommissioning people who have failed.
mm,
That's what forgiveness is all about.
mm,
You can't go anywhere unless you understand failure, hurt,
mm,
and pain. And so you suffer with those individuals. You
mm.
can't be a follower of Christ and not suffer with them and not want to empathize with them. That's the problem we face right now.
Dr. Gable, my producer, has given me the 4-minute mark. Will you please lead us out on a word of hope, your thoughts about what we can do to change and inspire us? Our people are broken, they're suffering. Suffer with us, Dr. Gable.
I can only say one thing: Christ, the hope of glory.
Mm,
That's all we have. Now, and it starts with prayer. It starts with that relationship with Him
mm,
and understanding that God knows everything you're going through.
mm,
God understands it. But look for the light around you. Look for that possibility around you, that anticipation. The cataclysmic things that occur, don't allow them to distract you.
mm,
Life can distract you, but love can anchor you and get you through it. We are
mm,
people of love. And that's all I can tell you. Pray and love and follow his word. Now you're trying to say, well, just say one thing. Man, but you got to be in the word.
mm,
If you're not in the word, I get challenged by this whole Christ thing, God thing. I'll be honest with you. And we may have to talk about this another time, but
look forward
you
to
know,
it.
this God and unseen man and this whole Judaism where he came, but but I understand redaction in the scriptures and all the councils of the church and the split between the east and all of that stuff. But why have I not given up on Christianity?
Mm,
Well, because out of all of the 11 great religions, there's only one. There's only one religion that teaches love as the anchor,
mm,
and that's Christianity. I,
mm,
I would be a Buddhist
mm,
if I thought that. I it's the roast stuff. As a matter of fact, the truth of the matter is, I kind of dabbled in all of them. I was a Jew at one time. I really was. And I was Namir King, Renge Ko. I was out of body experience. I was a seeker. You know, I read um, the fellow Thomas Paine in
mm,
college as a freshman, and Thomas Paine said, "Your church is your mind." Oh
mm,
Lord! When I read that, I said, "Okay, I don't need that church stuff, man." And that's what I lived by.
mm,
No, it's not your mind, it's your heart.
mm,
It's
mm.
your heart.
Our very special guest has been Dr. Willie Gable Jr., a native of New Orleans, received his doctorate of ministry from United Theological Seminary, Master's of Divinity from the Union Baptist Theological Seminary in New Orleans, Louisiana, a Master's of Public Health from the University of Southern California, and a Bachelor's of Science degree from Tennessee State University. He's one of the most respected progressive pastors in the United States of America. He understands the difference. He understands what we're going through. He is suffering with us. And thanks to his leadership, we are all the more better. Dr. Gable, I hope you'll join us back again on the Jesse Jackson Jr.
Certainly.
Show.
We'll be happy to.
I can't wait. And none of us
Whenever you can.
Love you so much,
God
Dr.
bless
Gable.
and peace to everyone.
God bless you. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You've been listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Our very special guest has been Dr. Willie Gable Jr. Until next time.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.